morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
You know, when I start thinking that all of this riding, moving cattle, roping, doctoring, branding, training is kind of a young man's game, I think of some inspiring top hands I've had the privilege of meeting and in some cases riding with, and that reminds me of why I do this. As I said long ago, as long as I'm able to climb on a horse, that's where I want to be. Now, one of the most inspiring top hands I've met is the legendary Jack Brainard. Jack's about 95 now, still rides every day, and last year he published his latest book, A Horseman Remembers His First 90 Years. It was a great privilege to work with him when we were both asked to be judges at the Road to the Horse colt starting competition in Tennessee a while back, and boy did I enjoy the visit and hearing Jack's stories.
On our ranch at that time, we hired excellent cowboys for $25 a month that worked 14 hours a day.
You'll enjoy hearing from this true legend of the West today, and Baxter Black was invited to take part in a celebrity team roping recently. Wait till you hear about the guy they partnered him with.
One spur aimed out from the side of his heel like he'd hung it in a car door. He seemed to have been interrupted mid-shave by a loud noise.
And on the Rangeland News, a price comparison, and yes, it is all about beef.
That's $1.34 lower than summer of 2014.
On the horse training file, the question is, I have a question about a 3-year-old green brogue horse. How hard should a green brogue horse be worked? If they're coming along good, is it a good idea to keep pushing them into new situations? I'll give you my answers. And we have a classic Song of the West, the story behind the song, a good piece of cowboy poetry, and we'll get things going here with Bob Marshall.
My father was a saddle tramp, my mother was a saint. She put up with his cowboy ways, never voiced complaint. One day my father left the ranch to strike out on his own. She hung a homemade sign above the doorway to our home. May your belly never grumble, your heart never ache, your horse never stumble, and your cinch never break. May your life be filled with laughter in good times and despair. May God see you in heaven, for the devil knows you're there. Once I had a pretty wife, a home to hang my spurs. I thought I'd best quit my roaming cowboy days for her. She saw it broke my heart, left my soul half dead. Lovingly she set me free, and this is what she said. May your belly never grumble, your heart never ache, your horse never stumble, and your cinch never break. May your life be filled with laughter in good times and despair. May God see you in heaven, for the devil knows you're there. Saddles and many miles rode. I'm older but no wiser for those wild seeds I've sowed. But when I reach that final gate to heaven's grazing lands, I hope to hear St. Peter's voice giving this command. May your belly never grumble, your heart never ache, your horse never stumble, and your cinch never break. May your life be filled with laughter and good good times and despair. May God see you in heaven, for the devil knows you're there. May God see you in heaven, for the devil knows you're there.
Being on the judges panel at the Road to the Horse gave me a great chance to visit and compare notes with several of the other judges, including Mike Kevill, Dr. Bob Miller, and of course the legend Jack Brainard.
We see people trying to teach a horse to stop, so they'll go out and stop him 50 times, which is crazy, you know.
Well, he might have 4 or 5 good stops in him that day, and you use them all up on the practice pen.
And we see it all the time. He makes 4 or 5 nice pens, then he makes a bad one. They decide, oh gosh, I got to quit
Time to quit on that one.
So they won't quit on that. They'll go stop him 20 more times.
Yeah.
You know, we see that all the time. That's another fallacy. That you can't do those things.
I really enjoyed watching a video of Eton Beth Palakamy and cowboy dressage with, I think the horse was Holiday Compadre, the name of his stud. That was, that opened my eyes to, I'd sort of consider it, I love watching dressage riders, but I'd always felt, you know, it wasn't really a Western event, but it, you know, that kind of opened my eyes to the fact that this is beautiful to watch.
Oh, it is. It's wonderful. You know, the thing about Western dressage, it's really true horsemanship. I'm kind of sort of a student on horsemanship. I have more books, old books on them, and I study those old horsemen and what they could do years ago. We know that dressage started in Italy in a stable run by a man named Grissone, and this was in 1520. And he could get the horse to doing a piaffe and a pirouette in 1520. Then a little bit later, the Spanish riding school come in, which is still famous, the home of the Lipizan, and that thing started in 1570. So here we are 500 years ago. Those horsemen were practicing these moves, and they knew how to do it, so they can't be all wrong because their pretty moves have been at it a long time. So this is kind of the history of dressage, and you can't discount it because there's probably more true horsemanship about it than there is in any kind of form of Western dressage that we have. As you know, of everyone who saddles a horse in America every single day, 75% of them are women. And they're between the ages of 65 and 35. And they do not want to run barrels, and they do not want to rope, and they cannot afford to ride a cutting horse. And they've trail ridden a lot, but they'd like a little more challenge. And right here it is.
Jack Brainard's thoughts on training are really worth hearing, but wait till he talks about his early days on the family ranch during the Depression years. I think that'll really put things in perspective. Lots to come when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Boy, it's inspiring to think that at the age of 95, Jack Brainard is still riding pretty well every day. He has a huge list of honors and accomplishments in the horse industry from coast to coast. And he told me a little bit about his early background.
I was born and raised on a ranch in South Dakota. And I was born in 1921. But historians will tell you that the 20s at one time in America were called the Roaring 20s because there was lots going on and the country was in good shape and everybody was making money, that type of thing. Until 1929 when we had the stock market crash. And things did fall apart after that. Banks went broke, all of them, not just a few, but all of them. Now, in the early 30s, from 30 on to 1934, we were faced with a depression. And people don't understand. We radio people tell about what terrible depression type situation we're in when they don't have a clue. On our ranch at that time, we hired excellent cowboys for $25 a month that worked 14 hours a day. My mother, we milked cows and sold cream and eggs to buy groceries. It was a tough deal. And my mother had grown up in Iowa, and they moved to South Dakota and homesteaded in 1909. And so then during the Depression, it was so bad my parents decided to go back to Iowa because they had relatives back there. But we left South Dakota in 1932 on the best little ranch you've ever seen. I mean, a good one. There were only 2 sections of it, but there were about 10,000 acres of lease for nothing. And we had 150 or 200 cows, and we gave that up and just drove away from it, owing $5 an acre on the land and $5 a head on the cows. This was the Depression. But during this time, my father loved horses and had good ones. We did have horses.
There's more from Jack Brainard in a few minutes, but now listen closely and see if you can identify the voice on this poignant song about the state of the West today.
This is the last cowboy song, the end of 100-year waltz. The voices sound sad as they're singing along. Another piece of America's lost. He rides the feedlots, clerks in the market, on weekends selling tobacco and beer. His dreams of tomorrow surrounded by fences, but he'll dream tonight of when fences weren't there. He blazed the trail with Lewis and Clark, and eyeball to eyeball, old Wyatt backed down. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Travis and Texas, and rode with the 7th when Custer went down. And this is the last cowboy song, the end of 100-year waltz. The voices sound sad as they're singing along. Another piece of America's lost. Remington showed us how he looked on canvas, and Louis L'Amour has told us his tale. Me and old Waylon and Chris sang about him, and wish to God I could have ridden his trail. The old Chisholm Trail is now covered in concrete, and they truck 'em to market in 50-foot rigs. They roll by his marker, and they don't even notice, like living and dying was all he ever did. And this is the last cowboy song, the end of 100-year waltz. The voices sound sad as they're singing along. Another piece of America's lost. This is the last cowboy song, the end of 100-year waltz. The voices sound sad as they're singing along. Another piece of America's lost. This is the last cowboy song, the end of 100-year waltz. The voices sound sad as they're singing along. Another piece of America's lost. This is the last cowboy song, the end of 100-year waltz. The voices sound sad as they're singing along. Another piece of America's lost.
Kind of a sad commentary there, written by Ed Bruce, and did you figure out the singer? It was Rex Allen Jr., who you will see at the 40th Annual Ivan Daines Country Music Picnic, August 10th to 14th, along with a big list of country music stars. And there will also be a great colt starting competition demonstration with some of Alberta's top hands. Guys like Tommy DeRoche, Rod Olson, Brent Trout, and several more. And I plan to be horseback there doing the commentary, and I think I'll be riding a pretty good little horse. Now, there have been some tough times in the ranching business over the years, but probably nowhere near as difficult as the 30s that Jack Brainard experienced.
And just drove away from it, owing $5 an acre on the land and $5 a head on the cows. This was a depression. But during this time, my father loved horses and had good ones. We did have horses. And, of course, when we went back to Iowa, then it was a farming situation, not ranch. And, of course, we farmed with horses during that. So I grew up in the horse business. I rode horses to a country school when I was 6 years old, clear through up until the 8th grade. Rode to school when it was 10 below zero. We didn't know how cold it was because nobody had a thermometer, you know. But this was my background. And then when I got home and a teenager, grew up in Iowa with the western background, I still loved to rope and ride horses, and I kept horses all that time. In fact, I went to college at Iowa State, and I took horses with me to train for my tuition at Iowa State. And after that, I got competitive and then went to the Army. That was the only time in my life that I haven't been on a horse is when I was in the Army. But nearly every day I've been on a horse all my life.
And still are.
Yeah, and still are.
Mm-hmm. And that, I think, that's an inspiration to so many of us, that at every hour I spend in the saddle is the best hour I could ever spend. I've been like that all my life. And when I see what you're doing, boy, if I could just be like Jack Brainard when I'm at that point, I don't think I could ask for anything better.
No, that's the thing.
And Jack will talk about some of the things he feels have really helped him with his good health for so many years, and it all relates to horses. That's coming up in a little while. And next, be sure to hear about Baxter Black's celebrity team roping partner when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan with a little peek at roping with a celebrity. What holds the loaded 30,000-pound trailer to the heavy-duty truck? What holds the 38-foot RV trailer to the dually? What holds the 2-horse trailer with your daughter's favorite pony to the half-ton pickup? Well, the odds are it's a B&W trailer hitch, probably a turnover bowl, American-made, employee-owned, customer-tuned, and proud of their part in America's greatness. B&W, holding things together down the road. I was invited to participate in a celebrity team roping, a very fancy affair with movie stars, singers, artists, bronc riders, and football players. They match a celebrity with a top professional roper who tries to make the celebrity look good. I was included in the celebrity category, but as one of the staff pointed out, some of the professional ropers were so good they needed a severe handicap to even things out. So, in fact, they invited me not because I was really a celebrity, but because they'd seen me rope. Oddly enough, the cowboy I drew up with was a past world champion who'd changed careers and become a movie star. He now lives in Hollywood, eats health food, and has 8x10 promotional photos of himself in flattering poses, security, and his endorsement deals prevent me from naming him, so I'll just call him King Kenny. I didn't know what to expect. I was nervous about meeting him. His manager, publicist-hairdresser combination, visited with me beforehand so I could act normal. Kenny showed up incognito. Somehow I guess I was expecting a scepter and a crown, maybe a flowing purple robe, people scattering flowers across his bow. His first words were, "Can I borrow a rope?" His boots appeared to be different sizes. There was a stain on his straw hat that I took to be a raptor deposit. His second words were, "Can I bum a chew?" One spur aimed out from the side of his heel like he'd hung it in a car door. He seemed to have been interrupted mid-shave by a loud noise. He looked around furtively and then drilled me with his pink and blue eye. "I'm disguised as a healer," he said. I decided not to take umbrage at his disparaging comments, since I, in fact, was the designated healer. At the roping that night, we'd have won the whole shooting match, but I missed both steers, and we didn't make the short go. He was gracious about my ineptitude. We stood proud and tall as they passed out buckles to the winners. He bummed another chew, gave me his horse to brush down, and put up. I walked King Kenny through the crowd as people stopped him for autographs and photo opportunities. I felt really special. It was a treat to be in the company of a world champion, and I'll cherish the memory. The only damper on the evening was he kept introducing me as his personal trainer and massage therapist. Oh, and he called me Buster all night. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, brought to you by B&W Turnover Bowl.
The Stony Plain Cowboy Gathering is August 19th to 21st at Heritage Park, Stony Plain, with a great lineup of entertainers, including Eli Barzy, Jackson McKenzie, Ed Peekycoot, Doris Daly, Ryan Fritz.
It's raining in the saddle, the wind's in your face.
Celebrating cowboy traditions through music and poetry for 24 years. For reservations and information, call 780-963-6092 and see StonyPlainCowboyPoetry.com. You know, when we go to a restaurant, not even a high-end 5-star place, but just a family sit-down restaurant, sometimes a hamburger is going to cost about $12. Have you ever wondered just how much markup there is? Well, you might find the first item on the Rangeland News pretty interesting. But first, here's a pretty good song from High River's Ed Duncombe.
Cowboy is a lonely kind, always on the go, traveling to the rodeo to ride another bull, pay his fee, take his ride, put on another show. It's just the way of living that only cowboy knows. Saddle up for riding, it's just another day. Another day's wages, it's always been that way. Life's the lonely way of life, most don't understand. Values are in living, and feelings for the land. Cowboy is just a way of living, a simple way of measuring a man. How he sees the world every morning and values the shaking of your hand. Cowboy plays the guitar, sings his country songs. He can't say in words, but he can write into a song. Loves to hear the steel guitar, add feelings right or wrong. Singing's really given, a cowboy loves it all. Cowboy's way is saying he's just living, but it's a life that he can understand. It doesn't mean a thing if he's not doing whatever comes from deep inside the man. Cowboy is just a way of living, life that he can understand.
Now the news of the rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
On the top of page 1, it says here, have you ever wondered how much that beautiful burger you created with your own barbecue is worth right now, this summer? Let's find out from Gary Crawford.
If you're buying the stuff to make those burgers,
we can expect to pay less than we did last year.
Ooh, Agriculture Department economist Anne-Marie Coons, her burger has
1/4 pound of ground beef, 2 slices of bread, 1/1-ounce slice of cheese, piece of lettuce, tomato.
Now, last summer, Anne-Marie tracked the price of a hamburger with these ingredients. The average cost then?
$1.87.
$1.87. This is a burger made at home. And what's the cost of that same burger this summer?
$1.76.
Or 11 cents below last summer. Kuhn says the main reason's about a 10% drop in ground beef prices. Now, if you're adding a couple of slices of bacon to it,
that would add 70 cents to your burger. So that would bring the grand total of your now bacon cheeseburger to $2.46.
Still 6 cents lower than last year's bacon cheeseburger. And get this, that's $1.34 lower than summer of 2014. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Well, that's great, Gary, but how come if you go anywhere but a fast food restaurant, that burger's going to cost you about $12? The overpopulation of wild horses and burros is a concern to cattlemen in Nevada, and it seems to be getting worse. J.J. Goycochea is a veterinarian and past president of the Nevada Cattlemen's Association.
Since the inception of the Wild Free-Roaming Horse and Burro Act in 1971, the number of horses on our western rangeland is more than 2.5 times what it was originally set at. As a result of that, we are seeing ecological destruction of a lot of our western rangelands. Keep in mind that these are in an 8 to 10 inch precipitation zone, a lot of these. When you cross that threshold of ecological damage, it is impossible to bring that back.
Now, this seems like a good news story. Western Tractor Company Limited, a farm equipment dealership with 4 southern Alberta locations, has donated $750,000 to Lethbridge College. The money will be used to create a lab in the college's new Trades and Technologies facility that's scheduled for completion in 2017. The Western Tractor Technology Lab will be included in the first phase of the building and will be used by students in the agricultural and heavy equipment technician programs at the college. In addition, Western Tractor signed a 5-year agreement to supply John Deere equipment that will allow students to learn on the latest models and gain expertise in precision farm technology. And here's something else that's interesting. Pulling the bale wrap off those round bales as you feed them takes a lot of time and sometimes creates a problem. Where do you put it all once you pull them off the bales? And there actually have been cases of cattle dying after eating the bale wraps. Well, how about this? 3 PhD students in London, England have invented an edible bale wrap. The patent-pending BioNet biopolymer was developed specifically for farms to wrap hay and silage, and the students say they've eaten the bale wrap and they've fed it to their own cattle. And next they're looking into lacing the plastic with nutrients or probiotics. Researchers will then test the plastic for its nutritional quality and make sure that it's safe to eat. And they believe the material could be available to farmers in 3 to 5 years, with on-farm tests being carried out in the next 24 months. Boy, I enjoy the writing, great writing in Alberta Beef Magazine and Beef Illustrated. Bonnie, Garth, and Lee put some great articles together that not only keep us informed and educated, but they make you feel good to be in the cattle business. To subscribe, you can call 403-250-1090. You know, there's always something interesting happening at the Innisfail auction market, and they have regular cattle sales every Wednesday, horse sales twice a month. And as you look forward to bringing in those yearlings and finding a way to market them, you might want to check with the folks there. Find out more at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And that takes us down to the final item. Got a bit of history of the West with this one. The Tate Watch Company was established in 1880 in Massachusetts, and they wanted to expand their line of products, so they decided on compasses, reasoning that the pioneers traveling west would all need one. Now, their watches were just excellent quality, not so their compasses. The pioneers heading west sometimes ended up in Mexico or Canada, and that's where this expression came from. He who has a Tate is lost. And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Horse Training File, we'll look at young horses and how hard we should work them when they're only 3-year-olds. Jack Brainard shares some of the things that have helped him to still be in the saddle at the age of 95. And there's more of that crisp, clean music of the West when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Got the Horse Training File coming up and more from Jack Brainard, but first, here's a guy who's ranched in the shadow of the Bear Paw Mountains of Montana for a long time. Ken Overcast.
I'm going to my home up in the Bear Paws, and I'm gonna settle down, wait and see. I'll see that dear old cabin when the snow falls, and the gal that's waiting patiently for me. I can see the cattle grazing on the hillside, and I can see those baby calves down in the vale. When the crocuses are blooming in the valley, then it's springtime and you'll see me hit the trail. With my darling, I will wander down the pathway when the blazing sun sits back on Baldy's Dome. And we'll wander down old Birch Creek in the moonlight to that little old log cabin we call home. I can hear the coyote howling on the mountain, and I can hear that hoot owl hooting from his tree. There'll be a magic spread from Cow Creek to Centennial, but I can hear those Bear Paw Mountains calling me. And I can hear that hoot owl hooting from his tree. There'll be a magic spread from Cow Creek to Centennial. Well, I can hear those Bear Paw Mountains calling me. Yeah, I hear those Bear Paw Mountains calling me.
I don't know if you can hear that or not. It is just really raining like mad outside my little studio window here at the ranch. Billy and I spent, the last 6 or 7 hours moving a nice bunch of cows way up on top of the mountain, and we got back just in time. And now, boy, the skies have opened up. But a little tough if you're putting up hay, but otherwise it's sure making the grass grow. Anyway, for those of you who've been asking about our next Spirit of the West cruise, well, you may know by now. Billy and I will be hosting a great group of Spirit of the Westers aboard the beautiful Holland America ship, the Noordam, and we're going to be sailing out of the spectacular Vancouver Harbor, visiting Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway, Glacier Bay, 2 spectacular days of sightseeing in Denali National Park. Then we board the magnificent McKinley Railroad with their sightseeing dome cars and look for North America's highest peak, Mount McKinley. Then we go on to Anchorage. We've got, of course, our Western music concerts, sing-alongs, great food, and it's a trip that a lot of people have wanted to take for a long time. And the package includes return airfare from Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver. Of course, all ground transfers in Vancouver and Anchorage, and much, much more. And here's something else. If you like traveling by rail, we have an optional Rocky Mountaineer rail package that'll get you from Calgary to Vancouver or Edmonton to Vancouver on request. Our whole schedule with prices and everything else is available on the cruise page at our website, hugh-mclennan.com. And Jim and Karen will be happy to give you all the information at our toll-free number, 1-800-530-0131. Way up north. I think it was Ray Walker of the Jordanaires that did that part on the low C in Johnny Horton's big recording of North to Alaska. Time now for the horse training file. Question from a listener about a 3-year-old Greenbroke horse. He says, how hard should a Greenbroke 3-year-old be worked? If they're coming along really nicely, is it a good idea to keep pushing them into new situations? All right, now that's a pretty general question, and there is no set answer that would apply to all young green horses. They vary so much in physical ability, energy levels, and emotional makeup, and it also depends a lot on what kind of a career the young horse is going to have. Performance horse prospects are trained hard for futurities, but a lot of them are worn out before they're 10 years old. On the other hand, a lot of hard-working ranch horses can still do a hard day's work well up into their 20s, but a lot of them were not even started until they were 4, and then given just enough work to help them learn and like their jobs. Now, some big outfits will bring in the colts as 3-year-olds, do some quality groundwork, and put a few rides on them, moving cattle in easy situations, and then turn them out until they're 4. They won't be forced to do a long, hard, challenging day, if possible, until they're 5 or 6, after their growth plates have completely closed. And I think that has a lot to do with how long these hard-working horses last. I found it takes a lot of miles to get a good ranch horse really conditioned physically, but when they are in good shape, it's just amazing how hard and long they can go. I've seen riders in the arena lope a dozen circles or more and then stop because they say their horse is tired. Actually, I think it's probably because the rider's tired. My horses can willingly lope for 20 minutes or more once they're warmed up, and it seems like the longer they go hitting that rhythm with all systems going, the better they feel. And one more thing. In developing a young horse, I think we should challenge them mentally, move them out of their comfort zone, but not discourage them. We can physically challenge and condition them, but not stress them. And I hope that helps. Something that I know really helps is that daily feeding of Hoffman's horse ration. And Lucky the Wonder Horse is somewhere around 30 years old now, and she's still going strong and feeling great, and she gets a feeding of that Hoffman's horse ration every day. You can find out more at hoffmanshorseration.com. Well, Jack Brainard is a legend in the horse industry. He's an inspiration for sure, and at the age of 95, he still rides nearly every day.
Maybe that's one of the secrets of my old age, because I have lived a life with horses, and I've enjoyed them, and I've been fortunate enough to stay with them, and I wasn't obligated by a job where I had to push a time clock or be there. You know, I've sort of been on my own all my life, and from that standpoint, I've been fortunate, you know, along with good health.
Well, I've ridden with, a number of fellows that are up in their 80s or more, and some of them are a little bit stove up on the ground and they don't get around too well, and getting on is a bit of a challenge, but man, once those guys are in the saddle, it's just like they're 30 years younger.
Well, this is the way it is with me. I just can't reach a stirrup from the ground anymore. I have to have a mounting block, but when I get down, I'm at home.
Yeah.
Well,
Jack, thank you so much for sharing so much of this, and just keep riding.
Okay, and I enjoyed the visit.
Jack Brainard, what an inspiration, and I'm glad I can still be riding today, and I hope I can still be riding when I'm as old as Jack is now, but somehow I'm afraid I might turn out more like the subject of this song from Ben Crane, Too Old to Ride the Range.
Now Grandpa was an old cowman, he come north to make a hand, to ride and rope and settle on the northern range. Yeah, he'd come trailing up behind longhorn cattle. He didn't own much but his bed and his saddle, some wore-out gear, and a healthy case of mange. Still, he'd come here with a plan to be more than just a hired hand. His own outfit he planned to acquire. So with that in mind, he went to work. There was no duty that he would shirk, whether roping cows or flanking calves by the fire. Till in some time he saw his dream of timbered hills and flowing streams and cattle grazing in grass up above their knees. You know, he was right content with life, so much so that he took him a wife. Now she cleaned him up and made him get rid of all of them fleas. But Grandpa, he didn't argue none, 'cause in some time they had a son, and soon he became his pride and joy. And he thought to himself, what more can there be than to live your life up here where it's free with a loving wife, an outfit, and now a boy. Still, you know, some folks would say, what'll you do when you're old and gray, when you're too old to ride and you retire? He said, now folks might think I'm strange, but I think I'll still ride the range somewhere warm and close to the fire. So then in some time that chosen son, he up and marries to my mom, and in due time I appears upon the scene. But Grandma, she done passed away, and it hit Grandpa hard, they say. This little story will show you just what I mean. Seems as Grandpa's life went on, sometimes his mind it went along, and it left him wondering just what he'd set out to do. It got to where if he wanted to cough or spit, we'd give him a chair so he could sit down, or he'd lose his teeth in his plug of chew. But still, you know, he was my own Grandpa, and he lived there with me and Ma, although he missed his home out on the range. Oh, one day we found him in the kitchen, sitting on a stove just scratching and itching. Then we knew Grandpa was getting strange. Well, he just looked at me and he said, son, you know, my life is nearly done, and it's time that I quit riding and I retire. But I think that you can see, that is if you look at me, that I still ride the range, and I'm by the fire. Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam, and I'll never walk barefoot again.
Still to come, our classic Song of the West and the story behind it, then the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. In our classic Song of the West segment this week, we're looking at actually what is a classic piece of cowboy poetry written by Bruce Kiskaden, and as most of you know, he was born in Pennsylvania, later moved to the Southwest where he worked on and off of cow and horse outfits, and then he decided to seek fame and fortune in Hollywood, and he spent the last 25 years of his life as a bellhop and an elevator operator in Los Angeles hotels. Some of them were actually in Hollywood. And between calls and between elevator trips, he'd sit in the corner of the lobby with a stubby little pencil in hand, and he opened up a world of memory of the cow camps, the horses, and the open range. He may have carried bags for Roy Rogers, John Wayne, Gene Autry, or Ronald Reagan, but his words will still resonate with the privileged few who have and still do live the life. And Michael Fleming set the words to one of Kiskaden's most meaningful poems to music, and it's a song that makes a powerful statement to those who are able to read between the lines.
It's something that I'm not forgetting, something that I could not say. I could not arrange the setting and the scene in the proper way. Here of the desert and mountain and the smoke of the far out camp, the whispering voice of the night wind and the picketed horses tramp, with the tread of the moving cattle and the song that the riders croon, the swing and sway of the saddle that goes to the lilt of the tune. That's why I'm giving you warning. There's some things a cowboy can't tell. The joys as clear as the morning, the tortures akin to hell.
These words won't reach outsiders who were raised in the town's confines, but they're here for the hard old riders who can read them between the lines. A quiet night in the summer, when the air's moist and warm, you hear the rumbling thunder, and you watch the approaching storm. When the heavens pour like a funnel, and the devil his own can claim, when the sky is black as a tunnel, and then white with the lightning's flame, it is then that the weak go under, when it calls for hardy greed, the shattering crash of the thunder, and the rush of the mad stampede. That's why I'm giving you warning. There's some things a cowboy can't tell. The joy's as clear as the morning, the torture's a kingdom. These words won't reach outsiders who were raised in the town's confines, but they're here for the hard old riders who can read them between the lines. The terrible grip of the blizzard, when the horse and the rider reel, the curse of the snow-blind puncher, and the frostbites to throb and feel, will the nights you hate to remember, when you lay in the line camp alone, when the gray wolves howled in the timber, and the perishing cattle moan. Will you try to prevent the slaughter, but the frost and the storm were king? How you chop the ice from the water and prayed for an early spring. That's why I'm giving you warning. There's some things a cowboy can't tell. The joy's as clear as the morning, the torture's a kingdom. These words won't reach outsiders who were raised in the town's confines, but they're here for the hard old riders who can read them between the lines. Yes, they're here for the hard old riders who can read them between the lines.
Now, that was a wonderful group. Michael Fleming, the late Dave Bourne and his wife Patty, Billy Beeman on fiddle, Bobby Beeman on lead guitar, and Don Richardson on bass. The Lobo Rangers is what they were known as. Well, it's time for the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight now, and I haven't seen this guy for a long time. But he's a fine poet and a radio host on National Public Radio in Tennessee. Bill McCallie, and the poem is about a cowboy artist.
Now, every cowboy has a hobby, just to pass his idle time, hunting, fishing, or golfing, or sometimes just writing down a rhyme. Now, these things are all important to round out the cowboy's life. They calm him down and help subdue all that doggone inner strife. Now, old Bob, he was a drover and a roper quite the best. The art was Bobby's hobby, though it sure gave his soul a rest. He'd rope and drove all week long till the weekends come around, then he'd take his little easel and ride old Gallo into town. He'd set his easel up and he'd spread his oil paints all around. He'd paint some pretty pictures of the landscape and the town. Well, he had been painting all morning long, and he finally stopped to think. He said, "You know, it's hot out here and I'm thirsty. I think I'll get myself a drink." So he ambled into Rosebud's, and on a stool he sat. His forehead was a-dripping and his shirt was wringing wet. Now the barmaid was a vintage queen and a master of her craft. She asked Bob what he wanted, and Bob simply ordered a draft. She brought his beer, and with a smile she sort of fondled his right arm. She blinked her eyes, and in a flash she was turning on the charm. Now Bob was a real fine cowboy, and as an artist he was great. But when it came to women, Bob was somewhat second-rate. See, his body was in second gear, his mind it was in first. Her mind was on his body, but Bob's mind was on his thirst. "What's that, paint on your hands? Are you a painter?" she inquired. He said, "Why, yes, ma'am, I'm an artist. I paint anything desired." As she pulled at her tresses, her heart began to throb as she pondered on the question she had been posing for young Bob. "Would you paint me in the nude?" she asked as her face began to blush. Bob's face turned red and his reply broke the barroom hush. He said, "Well, yes, ma'am, I'll be glad to if you won't get in a rush, and let me leave my boots on so's I'll have somewhere to stick my brush."
Well, thank you so much for making the ride with us this week, and I sure hope you can join us right here next week at the same time. And big thanks going out to Mark and Kathy McMillan, our great Spirit of the West support crew. Find out all about them at meadowsprings.com. And if you get a chance, check out our Spirit of the West radio show Facebook page, and if you like it, go ahead and share it. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.